Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Independent Thought. My name is Desmond Price. For those of you tuning in today, you might notice that this is a little different episode than normal. Normally, we are covering national politics, but as I've told plenty of my subscribers here, we are doing candidate episodes once per month. And for the month of September, we are joined by Christopher Coburn, who is running for the city commissioner's office out of Bozeman, Montana. Christopher, how are you doing today? Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Hey, Desmond, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be spending some time with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I really do appreciate you coming on and talking to us about your platform. As a resident of Montana, I felt like it was my duty to interview someone who's also a fellow Montanan. So I do appreciate that. And I kind of want to just start off with a little bit of personal questions. So
Yeah,
first and foremost, can you just tell everyone like what part of Montana you are from? Like, are you from the Bozeman area or did you grow up somewhere else?
I'm not from Bozeman. I actually was raised in Missoula, Montana. That's like my home. That's where my family's been for quite some time. My grandparents are from Great Falls originally. So moved to Bozeman 4.5 years ago. So been around Montana most of my life.
Okay. And so what was it about Bozeman that I guess initially like drew you there and then kept you there? Like, why did you want to like stay in that area?
Yeah. To be honest with you, when we first were thinking about making the move to Bozeman, I wasn't super pleased about it. Growing up my whole life really in Missoula, I was like, that's my home. This is my place. This is my community. And so we moved to Bozeman because my partner was starting engineering school at the university. I'm sorry, at Montana State University.
Yeah.
And so we decided to make the move. And then when I got here, I realized that all the stories I sort of heard about Bozeman growing up were not true. And in fact, Bozeman is just another one of these really beautiful, really special Montana communities. And so it didn't take me long after moving here to really get sort of connected to the community through the work that I do, through the sort of causes that I care a lot about, and found that there is just a really beautiful and passionate network of people in Bozeman working towards the same things that I'm working for. And so it started to feel a lot like home. Then my partner and I, we tied the knot here in 2019. And, that makes a place feel more like home too. You have all these really special, people come to your home to share it with you and to sort of celebrate in your marriage. And so that made it, really feel like home again. And then, now that I'm involved in local politics and being involved in the community in this newer way as an appointed member to the Bozeman City Commission, it's really cemented the fact that this is my community.
Right. And, being involved in the community can take on so many different forms. I know that you told me personally that you've been working in the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
And that must be an intense place to be right now, especially during a pandemic. Can you just explain to us a little bit what it's been like working at a hospital during a pandemic over the last year and a half?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just important to name that this pandemic has impacted each of us in very different yet profound ways. And, the way that it's presented for me in my life, both personal and professional, is that I've been, working to support healthcare operations throughout the entire pandemic. So for me, as someone who works, and I don't provide patient care. I sort of work in the other ways that hospitals support communities. But I've really spent my time in the pandemic supporting our care teams, helping to make sure that our communications to the public about COVID vaccines and COVID testing and sort of COVID signs and symptoms was clear and consistent. I also served during the pandemic and continue to serve on the Gallatin City County Board of Health. So not only am I, during the height of the pandemic, which, we could argue that we're reaching another peak right now, but during, the past 2 years, being able to serve on the County Board of Health and help to sort of set the rules and policies and processes that were designed to keep people safe, while at the same time working for the hospital that serves most people in our community, was just a really, it felt like a really important time in my career, a really critical way that I could continue to strengthen and support the community that I love so much. Was exhausting and trying and sometimes scary for this because there's just so much happening and so much changing. But I'm somebody who likes to. I feel the best when I'm able to contribute and give back and be sort of on the ground doing work. So during this pandemic, it's felt really special and really important for me to be able to actually, continue to work in ways that are supporting the community.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to, I will circle back to, more about your work with the healthcare industry, I think a little bit later in the episode, but, it has been a very exhausting time for so many people. I mean, not just in our communities, but,
Yeah.
across our state, across our country. And so with all that being said, this was the time that you decided to run for office.
Yeah.
Right. And so just talk to me a little bit more about the decision that goes into that. Like, why did you decide to run for office now? Like, why was this the right move? Why this position?
Yeah.
Why city commissioner?
Yeah, no, I think those are all really great questions. And there are a few people in my life that thought it was ridiculous that I was choosing to do this in this time, in this moment, just because of the amount of work that I've been doing, that we've all been doing, and just, how exhausted we all are. But those actually were some of the main reasons why it felt really right for me to run for Bozeman City Commission in this time and space, because I think that we really need leadership in this current moment that's going to be able to help us continue to stay safe and recover from this pandemic. And as a public health professional, I feel uniquely prepared to sort of offer those skills for my community in this new way. So that's one of the reasons. But really, the reason that I ran for office was a combination of the fact that I've always been interested in serving my community, and at this stage in my career, this feels like the right move, and just some random opportunity as well. The Bozeman City Commission had not one but two seats open before their terms were up in the fall of 2020. One of the commissioners had to step down, and then in April of 2021, another commissioner stepped down. So really, when I was, working from home a lot, helping to support the community through the pandemic, thinking about, what my community service might continue to look like, there was an opportunity to apply to be appointed to the newly open seat on the commission in October of 2020. And I thought, hey, I've sort of thought about this before. I have been thinking that this could be a way that I could continue to contribute to the community in a new way. And so, what's the harm in trying to get appointed? I'll throw my name in the hat. And if I don't get it, then that's fine. I'll keep working in what I'm doing. If I do get it, then that's really great. I'll have a chance to really explore if this level of public service is something that I want to do for a long time. So I sought appointment in October. I didn't get appointed during that appointment process. But what did happen was that I got a lot of community support. There was a lot of people who attended that commission meeting when they were appointing the new commissioner, and spoke on my behalf. And I took that, not necessarily to be about me as an individual, but about the need for there to be somebody who has a lot of the same experiences that most people in our community have. And so when that happened, I was just, first of all, overwhelmed. And, it is an overwhelming experience when you are confronted with the amount of support that you have, and just sort of when you sort of realize that you are in a position to really show up for people. And so that made me really, sure that I wanted to be elected to the commission. And so I launched my campaign in January of 2021. And then, like I said, there was that additional opening in April for the commission that I applied for after I already launched my campaign, and I ended up being appointed in April. So this is my very first time serving in public office at this sort of, at this commission level. And I'm doing it now as an appointed candidate who's working to get elected this November. So it's a lot of random circumstance mixed with just this, passion and interest and skill set that I think really makes me a good commissioner.
Okay. And I do want to take a second to, do a little bit of explaining for those at home, because I know that a lot of times when we have politicians come on, or we're talking about just topics in general, some people may be very aware of everything that we're talking about, but some people may not. So I kind of want to just break this down a little bit for everyone who's listening at home. What exactly does the city commissioner do? Like, what do you have authority over? Like, what exactly do you oversee in the community? Like, what
Yeah.
does a day-to-day operations look like for someone in your position?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It looks, I mean, depending on what community you're in, it looks a little bit different because, every community or, most communities have just a slightly different structure of local government. In Bozeman, where I'm a current city commissioner, we have a city manager form of government. So that means that there's 5 elected commissioners. One of those commissioners runs and serves as the mayor, and as a commission body, we oversee our city manager, who that role oversees like the operations day to day of everything going on within the city of Bozeman, as an organization. So my role as a commissioner is really to provide strategic guidance and directionality to the work that the city manager does every day. And as a commission, we set the strategic priorities for the entire city of Bozeman, and that looks, I think, in really important ways, like we approve and oversee the budgeting process every year. So
Okay.
which is no small feat, and I think for me, budget documents are really aligned, or they can communicate what the community really cares about. And so as a commissioner, we get to have say in where it is we're going to spend money and what sort of priorities we're going to have every year. We also are the deciding body for many decisions around development applications, site plan reviews, how we zone our community, what things can be built where. So we have a lot of agency and say and approval in many cases over how our community uses the land that we have and how we acquire new land through annexation. So those are some like the high level things that we work on every day, all the time. And then, we're sort of responsible for keeping our finger on the pulse of what's going on in our community, being responsive to the needs, talking to people about the things that they know we need to be concerned about in our community. And then, making sure that we're taking action on some of those things as they're aligned with our priority areas. So it's really about sort of being engaged in the community, helping to set our priorities, and then, really making sure that our priorities, the ones that we know we need to be working on, are well funded and aligned with our budgeting process.
Right. So it's safe to say that, that this body is basically like the legislative branch of the city of Bozeman. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So let's kind of dive into the issues a little bit, because obviously when, people are coming here to listen to this episode, they want to hear what your plans are for Bozeman. And Bozeman, like Missoula, has one very glaring need in, what everyone is talking about, which is housing, right?
Yeah.
So the housing, let's just call what it is. It's a crisis, across not just our country.
It's an emergency, yeah.
Yeah, but it's happening, very much so in the city of Missoula, where I live, in the city of Bozeman, where you currently live. People are being displaced over and over again from not being able to afford to live in these communities. I think the vacancy rate is, below like 1% the last time that I checked. It's becoming very unlivable for a lot of people. So the question that I asked several people that I knew from Bozeman, and I told them that I'd be, having this interview with you, and I asked them, and every single one of them, that was their top priority. So from your position, if elected, what is it that you plan to do to address the housing crisis in Bozeman?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And I'm not surprised everyone you sort of talked to identified that as the number one issue that they're concerned about, because that sort of mirrors the conversations I've been having. In every community conversation I'm in, every individual conversation I'm in, people know and experience and feel the crisis that is our housing. And it's more than just our housing crisis, it's our affordable and attainable housing, right? That's what I'm really focused on, and what we need to be sort of convening around. And for me, there's no easy way to sort of build ourselves out of the crisis that we're in. There's so many factors that contribute to the current experience we have. And as someone, I don't own my home. I'm in my apartment right now. I rent. I'm directly impacted by not being able to afford to live or to be able to own a home in the community in which I contribute to. So when I have this conversation, it's not just from a sort of understanding of the talking points or of the words, but from like an actual lived experience about something that's impacting me and the people that I care about, people that are really close to me. I think a few things that we can do that we are working on, that we will continue to do, that if I'm elected, I'll continue to see that we move forward on. And I think one is making sure that affordable housing is a part of every housing conversation that we have. There are some people who think that if we just build housing, that will increase the overall supply of housing and that will bring down prices. But what I'm concerned about is that if we don't articulate and spend time actually planning for affordable housing, we're going to just keep getting housing that continues to be unaffordable because it's built that way, it's designed that way. So I think that's one, is making sure that affordable housing, that we don't lose track of what the actual issue is. And the actual issue is houses that people can afford. So I think just keeping that as part of the conversation is one really important part. I think there's ways that we can be better and be more strategic about using the incentives that we have. Unfortunately, the state legislature took away our ability to have something that was called inclusionary zoning. So we used to be able to, for a few years, we were able to sort of mandate that affordable housing be built into these larger subdevelopments. We're not able to do that by law anymore, but we still have some ways that we can incentivize affordable housing. We could, for instance, we could say, if you want to use this site as a conditional use permit. So if you want to use this site in a way that it maybe wasn't exactly zoned for, or get some relaxations to our codes, we can allow that. But as an exchange, you have to then provide some percentage of affordable housing in that unit. We could look at things within our development code that make it harder to build affordable housing, like lot size minimums. For instance, that is sort of a practice that we call exclusionary zoning, and we have that in Bozeman. We have a requirement that a lot has to be a certain size to build a house on it. We have parking requirements that we could look at. If you have an apartment complex that's going up, you are really limited by the amount of parking that you are required to have. And so we could be making some exchanges and sort of code relaxations in exchange for housing that's going to be permanently affordable. And then I think, with that, I think, it's really important that we sort of strengthen the partnerships that we have. There's a lot of people who have really great ideas about what housing needs to look like. One example is a project I've been working on, not as a commissioner, but as, through the other ways I'm involved in the community, working on a project that was bringing permanently supportive housing to our community, which is this type of housing that is designed to be a permanent housing solution for folks who are experiencing chronic homelessness, that's not conditional on people being sober, let's say, and that brings the services that they need right to them. And the way that one of the ways that we're working on that is by building community of homes that really is a very different way for this community to look at housing. And they're tiny homes, they're close together, they're, the way that we brought that project to be would not happen if we had to stick directly to the code we have in Bozeman. So keeping an eye on our code and making sure that it's working for us, I think is one way that we can get more housing in Bozeman.
Okay. Well, I really do hope that some of these things come to fruition, because I know that so many people are struggling with just not only not being able to get a home, but even if you are able to get in a home, whether that's renting or buying, being able to afford said home is a whole different subject. But with that being said, there are more questions that center around the housing topic, but we're going to be right back after a quick break. So just stay tuned. We'll have some more questions with Christopher Coburn right after this.